Good morning, everyone. It's 9 a.m. and we are ready to get started. Welcome to today's webinar, Build Better Permitting Processes Using Lean Tools. My name is Joanna Bailey. I'm a Lean Specialist with the Center for Government Innovation, and it's my pleasure to serve as your moderator this morning. Your presenter today is Debra Hentz, who is also a Lean Specialist with the Center. You'll get to meet her in a few minutes, but first I have some housekeeping details to cover. You'll notice everyone's microphones are muted. This is to minimize distraction and ensure you can easily hear our presenter. The chat feature is also turned off. Instead, we invite you to ask questions of Debra at any time during the presentation using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Organizers will collect your questions and either share them with the group during the themed Q&A times during the presentation, or provide a direct response to you within your individual Q&A window. If we're unable to get to your question during the presentation, we will follow up with you by email afterwards. Please also watch for an email after the presentation containing links to referenced resources. Lastly, this session is being recorded and will be posted afterward on the SAO website under the Center for Government Innovations page. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, Debra and I are Lean facilitators with the Center for Government Innovation. The Center is the non-audit division of the State Auditor's Office. As you can see on the slide, the Center provides a variety of services and resources to local governments at no cost. But today, we are here to talk about building a better permitting process using Lean tools. So without further delay, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to your speaker, Debra Hentz. Debra, please take it away.
Thank you, Joanna, and welcome everyone. I want to start by telling you a little bit about how this webinar got started, because it has significance about Lean and my employer. You see, I'm actually a mechanical engineer who worked as a process specialist and change agent in the private sector for almost 30 years before joining the Center for Government Innovation. People often ask me, why is a Lean specialist working for the State Auditor's Office? And actually, I asked myself that same question when I first applied for the job. But I've learned that it's a perfect fit, because folks like me who have passion for efficiency often are built on the fact that I strive for accuracy and transparency. So you see, we're strongly connected, almost like a sisterhood, to the purpose of passion that the auditors have, because their mission is to make government more efficient and more effective. Most folks are familiar with their work that they do with financial audits, but their work that they do with performance audit is much less well known. There's a team of people who audit performance, which means that they look at targets stated in things like legislative requirements or a funded program, and they use their audit techniques to determine if those targets are being met. They publish formal and public reports about their findings and suggest recommendations based on what they learned. Their Growth Management Act performance audit, which was done this year, focused on 6 representative governments, 4 cities and 2 counties, measuring the compliance that they had with the current 120-day permit approval requirement. If you'd like to read the audit report, you can find it on our SAO website under performance audit, and we'll be sending out the direct link to all attendees in our post-webinar email. Please know that neither the performance audit nor this webinar includes any information about the upcoming revised state law regarding permit timelines or reporting requirements. We are here today simply to explain to any permit center how they can begin to pursue first of several recommendations that were made by the performance audit team. The primary one was to implement continuous process improvement methods. But before we jump into that content, the audit report included 6 leading or best practices. I know from my experience as a Lean specialist working with Lean governments, local governments now across Washington state for the past 10 years, many of you already use these practices. But if you're not, you might want to consider them. The first one is, my slide's going. The first one is to accept only complete applications. When the paperwork is accepted, there's an implied commitment that the government work will begin today. Knowing that there's a timeline requirement for your permit approvals, it's important to protect your organization by only accepting what you deem a complete application. I've heard way too many times a permit tech tell me that they're willing to hold incomplete paperwork for the submitter just as a favor so that they can call back later with any missing information. Unfortunately, what the permit tech calls hold, the applicant thinks of as submitted, because the applicant's assumption is that work will start when they submit their application. Therefore, accepting only complete applications at the counter is truly a best practice. The second one is to build mutual understanding of what process steps need to happen and what is expected between the applicant and the permit team before they receive their permit approval. This sounds simple from the team's perspective, but it can be really confusing from the applicant since each organization they work with has its own unique process. Even vocabulary can differ from one government to the next, and sometimes I find even difference between departments within one organization. It's the responsibility of the permit team to ensure that their customers understand what to expect while they're working with them. Which brings me to the third recommendation or best practice, which is to engage stakeholders early to avoid rework later. Beyond clarifying process steps and vocabulary, this means handling any of the tough questions the customers may have at the start of the process, which is why most permit centers include a pre-application conference as part of their permitting process. Sometimes it's optional, and other times they make it a required step. Number 4 is using information technology to improve communication. Computers will never solve all your process flow problems, but when they're done well, those technology tools enable better connection between team members who are likely doing concurrent work, and they provide the applicant with 24/7 self-service communication access. Applicants can submit requirements online, and they can check their project status during the time of day that's best for them. That customer interdependence really reduces the calls that will interrupt the team members with questions while they likely are in the middle of a detailed plan review. The 5th leading practice is developing special staffing systems. This one is mostly used in small organizations. Agreements can be made with on-call contractors or help from neighboring governments to step in during periods of high volume work. And then finally, number 6 is to improve permitting predictability and efficiency by analyzing their process, performance, and costs, which brings us to the purpose of today's webinar and one of the key recommendations made by the audit team. Because we know that the world does not stand still, implementing continuous improvement becomes important to the strategy for the organization to assure that they're constantly looking at their efficiency and making sure that they keep up when change happens. Whether that change is from a new law that goes into effect, or whether it's from a departing staff member that needs to be replaced with a new hire. We say continuous improvement, not to imply daily change, but rather to recognize that whatever process works well today may not be efficient for you next year. So with that kind of background about the webinar, let's talk about what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to first talk about why we believe that Lean is the best method for permit centers to use when they're implementing continuous improvement. Then I'm going to share a few basic Lean principles before we move into 3 tools that you can apply to start your continuous improvement project today. I'll share my personal experience regarding those tools and provide some recommended best practices. We do have time planned throughout the webinar to pause and answer your questions. So just like Joanna directed, please submit your questions as we go in the Q&A. Our hope is that attending the webinar today will empower you and your organization to gain more predictability and efficiency in your permitting processes. Okay, so here we go. Let's start with why. Why is Lean the method of choice for permit process improvement? Lean methodology can be applied to any process in any department with any size team. The method is adaptable and it's scalable. We know that most all permits require some type of cross-functional teamwork to assure that all aspects of the permit, be it legal requirements, local attributes, or something that is public impacting, they've all been reviewed, analyzed, and integrated into one cohesive approval. I like to say that Lean helps all members of a team see beyond their desk. The methodology is based on the belief that each individual subject matter expert knows their job better than anyone else. Having that expertise also means that one expert does not always understand what the other experts on the team are doing on their desk. When each subject matter expert can see and understand what their coworkers are doing, the team works better together. They have more respect for each individual expertise. They have better coordinating and alignment with those teamwork flows, and they understand the customer's perspective. Even though all those different specialty areas may only do one part of it, the applicant submits one project and expects the process to be a clear connection of all those different project steps that ultimately gets down to approving what their one complete project is. Not forcing the customer to make those connections between the different parts of the departments is what a customer will call efficiency and actually customer satisfaction. Seeing beyond my desk that I can deliver the best possible service from my area of expertise while simultaneously helping other team members have the information they need to do the same. And hopefully the ability to see onto my desk provides my partners with information that helps me be more efficient in the end too. So as I said earlier, Lean is scalable. Lean methods can be used to improve a single person process. However, the bigger value for Lean is when workflows include multiple people in what we call a value stream. And it's especially helpful for permit teams since your specialty areas in your value stream are so different and yet tightly interdependent. For example, we know that planners focus on land use, but they can only be confident in their decisions when their work is aligned with the civil engineers and the building officials. Some things may be clear in that solo world of mine, such as maybe zoning or critical areas, but planners really need to work closely with their partners when it comes to other items like water management systems or landscape requirements. Similarly, civil engineers focus underground on the utility infrastructure, but really can't finalize and approve their permits without knowing the specifics about the building size and usage. Even a small building remodel can have a huge impact on those infrastructure requirements, especially for something like an example of a strip shopping center wants to do a simple remodel and repurpose one of their offices, but it went from being an insurance office to a hair salon. Building also gets the most focus from applicants because it's the main driver for their permit request. Because the building construction comes last after land use and infrastructure, building officials are often seen as the project gatekeepers. They make sure that all the prerequisites have been met before that building permit is approved. Then there is management of the late change requests that ultimately come in, such as we decided to add a room, or let's just make a very small change on the footprint. It still requires the team to get back together, connect back with community development and back with public works to ensure that the project is still within original approval limits. Lean helps all these staff members work better together as a team. Seeing beyond my desk creates stronger working relationships and a better cross-functional clarity. Knowing that we work well together when needed and yet respect each other for having an expertise with boundaries means that we can provide better customer service for the applicant and continue to have great job satisfaction for ourselves as individuals. Lean methodology also provides the structure for identifying and creating process improvements that is the most beneficial for your unique organization, rather than simply implementing some off-the-shelf solution or best practice just because it worked for someone else. Lean principles create an organizational culture for building successful partnerships between management, staff, and stakeholders. And Lean tools provide the roadmap to see across team members' desks, including all the perspectives and input, rather than following any one individual opinion simply because they have the loudest voice or they have hierarchical power. So let's begin by talking about some principles. There's lots and lots of lean principles. I've picked 4 today, which will form a really good foundation for the tools that I want to introduce later. When these principles are followed on a daily basis, they can build your organizational culture, and that will have benefits far beyond any one improvement project that you may do. First, lean makes small changes over time to achieve big improvements, but always in the direction of what we term your true north. Making small change steps means that the risk of making the change is manageable. There's no way we can know everything at the start of a change. So by lowering the risk, we gain confidence that we can handle or manage the unknown or even mistakes when they happen. The role of leadership is to define that direction, that true north, for those small steps. We think of direction as established by a compass point, which allows the subject matter experts to tweak and adjust small changes as more is learned during each forward step. And yet, following a compass direction, we never veer too far away from the direction established by leadership. The second lean principle is to create those small changes following the theme of go slow to go fast, or a principle that we like to call PDCA. PDCA stands for plan, do, check, and adjust. We follow these 4 steps to create our own improved process because we cannot know everything at the start when our plan is only something in our idea phase or in our heads. Before establishing our improvements as our new standard process, we need to be sure that it works in the real world, not just in theory or on paper. We take extra time with slow thinking and team alignment to plan those steps, which are then tested by doing them, while we're collecting measurements to eventually evaluate whether there's truly been an improvement or not. It's a step we call check. With all the information at hand, we make our final adjustments and establish our new standard process. That new standard will provide stability and clarity for the team until we determine that we need to repeat that same structured improvement cycle again. We value continuous improvement, but just as critical are those established periods of standardization and stability in between the planned improvement cycles. In PDCA, we notice that the plan is the larger area of the pie than the other pie sections. That visual is actually very descriptive of the principle that we're going slow to go fast. We allow more time during this planning phase to assure that we have clear problem statements so that everyone involved in the improvement project knows what we're trying to accomplish. Once we define the problem and identify our targets, now we need a detailed understanding of the current state. People always jump with excitement to identify the waste. This is time we're going to eliminate the things we don't need. But actually, more accurately with lean, we take the time so that we clearly understand our current state to identify and protect the necessary tasks, the ones that must remain, because they're the critical few that deliver the purpose for our process and the value to our customer. We don't want to lose those. We don't move out of this planning phase until we have a clear idea for what improvement steps to make. We should include the who will lead the change, when the change will start, and what measurement method will be used to capture the real-world impact of our planned improvements. We say go slow, but with the ultimate purpose to go fast, because lean is all about results, not getting bogged down in analysis paralysis. In the doing phase, communication among team members and capturing those events that we're testing and we're doing becomes critical. We implemented the change and our measurement method for that change. We are doing what we planned, and we prepare for our next pie section when we will pause to check on the new information we learned and the measurements that we're capturing now during the doing phase. Lean always bases its decision as much as possible on facts, which should come from data collected during that testing phase. The data can be quantitative and based on actual numbers that we captured with some specific tool that we chose, or it can be qualitative, which is likely based on opinions or assessment, but those are performed by people with experience who can recognize when a trend is going negative or going positive. During this check phase, the team clarifies new information that was not expected but learned while doing. We use this factual data to make decisions in our fourth and final phase, which is where we're going to make some small process adjustments. The key here is not only making those final tweaks to our plan change, our new process, but also documenting a new standard process. We probably have to adjust some roles and responsibilities, and they need to be clarified. Training will need to be provided to those people that are impacted because of the new process steps that we're either adding or taking out. It may sound like these 4 steps take time, and I won't kid you, they do. But taking the time to go slow at the beginning and completing these 4 steps greatly increases your chance of successful and a sustainable outcome. Overall, dedicating the time to get it right at the start saves an excessive amount of time that you'll waste later on and frustration from the staff if you end up finding your problems and having to fix them when they're discovered later after you've rolled out your new process to the broader audience, and especially if it reaches the stakeholders. Okay, so let's move on to principle number 3, and that is that Lean always focuses on the process first, not the people doing the process steps. We avoid jumping to finger pointing at the person performing the process steps. Instead, we seek to understand the individual tasks and the actions that are being done by these people to complete their part of the bigger process, whether they are new to their position or if they've been doing their job for years. Dr. Deming, the so-called father of Lean, famously said, "A bad system will beat a good person every time." And we know that systems are based on the processes that create them. A process is defined as the flow or a repeatable action that happens during some type of work. Notice in this simple diagram that there will always be input that starts the process and some output that ends the process. What happens in the middle should add value, something measurable that converts that input into a desired output that is eventually used by a person we call the customer. Output is the critical end to our defined process because it should correlate to the purpose for the work we are doing. Peter Drucker, another well-known change manager, said, "There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not have been done at all." Therefore, we look critically at our output to ensure the purpose for our work and our efforts are clear. We always need to know how our work is valued going forward by others. Which actually brings me to principle number 4. The customer defines quality because the definition of customer is the person, the team, the organization that receives and uses my output. That definition leads us to the next level of customer understanding, and that is that we have internal customers as well as external customers. The external customers are always easily recognized. They're at the end of our value stream, and serving them is the main purpose that I have a job. However, as individual workers or subject matter experts, we also have internal customers, those team members who use my work output as input for their individual tasks. In other words, if I know who is using my output, then I also need to view them as my customer. I can only be confident that I'm performing my work to the best overall level of customer satisfaction if I understand how internal as well as external customers define quality. We hope this idea of serving internal customers is one of your key takeaways from this webinar. When you strive for process efficiency, each member of the team needs to identify their internal customers to understand those customer needs and how that internal team member defines quality of the input that they receive from you. If I disregard what happens beyond my desk, then I'm potentially causing my customers, my partners, my internal customers to work harder to complete their work. That inefficiency multiplies with every individual in the chain of outputs and eventually impacts our external or value stream customer. Get my slide up. Therefore, embracing these 4 lean principles together, we begin to see how even small improvements in my work can have a large impact on the efficiency and productivity of the entire team. And one small change that I can make is to see beyond my desk, to understand the entire value stream, not just stay in my silo or my expertise area, which is why lean is the chosen methodology for making process improvement in most any organization, but especially in the multidisciplined world of permitting. With that, I'm ready to take my first little break, and I'm going to check in here with Joanna and just see, are there questions that have been submitted? I know we only have a few minutes, but what do you have for us to address, Joanna?
Absolutely. Yes, we do have a question. It sounds like the 4 principles work in tandem throughout a project. Is that correct? Or are principles used one at a time throughout a project? Or maybe a few, but not all principles are always used?
It's a great question. And as I talked about methodology that has principles and tools, when we talk about lean principles, we are always talking about lean principles as a system. We embrace all the principles. This is not a pick and choose. I like number 1, but I really don't like number 4. We actually embrace all of the principles that we have. There may be times where one is more important, and you'll kind of hear me point that out even as we go into the tools. It could be that this principle is a little more important for this one, but it does not mean I'm going to disregard another one. And in fact, if I add to it one of our lean principles that I'm not going into detail on today is the fact that we as lean people, we're learners. We like to learn, and we will learn from mistakes. My point is, there are principles that we may not be able to do or follow as well as the others, and that's okay as long as we're trying, as long as we're striving to get better over time.
Okay, great. We have time for one more question. Here it is. PDCA sounds like it takes a lot of time, even with a small step approach. How much time should we plan to reserve to make improvements?
So I always love these questions, and partially because just like me, everyone else is trying to organize or create a plan. And please, please, Deborah, give us a number so that we can make a better plan. Actually, when I say PDCA takes time, and it does, just also remember that lean is scalable. It depends. There is no magic number. It really depends what you want to accomplish. I've worked with people that have done small little projects that maybe is a 1-person project on their desk. And I've seen them step through all 4 processes pretty quickly, even in a day, but they're still being very structured and they're being very disciplined to follow those steps. In the same breath, if you're working with a team or something that's a larger process, I can't expect to take the large scope and achieve a lot and not dedicate some time for that. So it really all depends. The answer to the question is it depends. It depends on the size of the project you want to take on, how many people are involved in that project. Anytime you're looking at even just doing some basic project management, the more people you have, the more opinions you're going to have, the broader the scope you're probably going to have. It takes more time. So what I would guide people to do, if the time commitment is what intimidates you, just pick something small to do in the beginning, because I just have seen so many times people see the gains that they get and the different outcome that they get. And then what I hear is it was worth the time I put up front because it saved me so much time later down the road.
And Deborah, we have time for about a 2-minute response from you to this third question.
Okay.
What happens when the external and internal customers define quality and or value added differently? About 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great question. And honestly, I would imagine it happens often, and especially in the permitting world. So I will try to not go into too much detail or off the rails here too much. But working with the permit teams that I have for 10 years, what we know is that when we have our end external customer coming in, They are most likely going to want something fast, turned around, and approved, no matter what they've asked for. And that's what quality is to them. If I think of my internal customers, and I'm looking at maybe someone over in the civil engineering department, and I'm a planner, what I know is they have certain codes and requirements. They are held to a certain standard, and their quality is going to look very, very different than their external customers. Here's the deal. In Lean, we talk about the fact that there are three elements that I'm always working with. I have what the customer values, I have what the law or my organization or some rule holds me to, and then I have waste. I have things that neither one of them want, but has probably crept into my world just because of computer changes or something that has changed in another department or something that comes up that it's just something that has happened and it has become part of what we do. So the point is, I would not think it's at all unusual that what the customer has as quality and what internal has as quality is different. But here's what I know. In the end, even the customer wants those same things met. They just define it a little differently. So unfortunately, you need to do both. But here's the piece I'll leave you with, Joanna. Hopefully I'm answering the question. Here's the piece I'll leave you with. In the end, what I hear from most permit teams, in the end, everybody is happy if we follow those rules of I know what the customer wants and I know what my internal customers want, and I'm going to find what the balance is between those two, especially if it's something like time or approval, because I've got to work it through. And that's what we come to, still following those two things. And even in the end, the external customer really wants a good approval. They want something that is not going to cause them problems a year from now or 2 years from now. Probably way more detail than I needed to go into, Joanna, but as you can tell, I have a lot of passion around this area.
That's great. And Debra, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay. So let's keep going here. So we're going to switch over and talk about Lean tools. So the definition of the word tool is a device with a particular purpose that usually requires some skill to use it properly. I'm going to cover 3 Lean tools in this webinar today: the charter document, the concept of Gemba, and process mapping. Each of these tools has a specific purpose, improvement project. After I explain the purpose and the application of each tool, I'll make just a few comments about my experiences using them while facilitating the Lean permit teams that I've done. Then I'll make a few recommendations that hopefully might get you started using the tool yourself. So the first tool is the charter document. The purpose for the charter document is to ensure clarity of project purpose and working team alignment before jumping in to create any change or any improvements. Why did you decide to select this topic for improvement? What's the goal or the target you want to achieve? And who needs to be involved in those decisions? Charter documents are concise, usually not more than 1 page, and written in plain speak. Often they are drafted by the project sponsor or a project team lead, and then they're shared with the other team members to hear their feedback and make adjustments regarding important elements from their perspective. Once it's considered final, the improvement project is ready to start. The charter document should be referenced regularly throughout the project to assure that the team has not deviated from the original goal, because scope creep can quickly derail the focus and lower the possibility of a successful plan and outcome of your improvement. The charter document continues to be used at the end of the project, so the team has a reference point, remembering where they started compared to where they ended. Confirming the project met the original goals will give the team a sense of satisfaction. Charter documents sound easy to do, and therefore the step to create one is often overlooked. I guarantee you that taking the time to write a charter document is a critical step, and often just as important for the project leader to clarify their message as for the team to understand what they are being asked to accomplish. We have a template and a training on how to create a charter document on our website, and we'll be including that link in the email that you get after the webinar. Again, this is a great first step for any improvement project because it clarifies the why, what, and who of the project. It communicates the purpose with others who might be affected by the outcome. And it actually provides some formalized feedback in a tool so that the project is understood. And if there are people that do have feedback, they can refer to the charter document, which is allowing them to add a little bit more clarity and questions and understanding that all up front before you get started so that you have all parties involved. When creating the draft, I usually ask leadership to select their top 3 or 5 targets. The list I see most often is reducing process time, improving team communication, and increasing the efficiency of the workflow. Many of those same practices and recommendations you'll find if you decide to read the performance audit report because they're included in there. However, the key for the sponsor is to make those targets specific enough to guide the team toward their true north, and yet not so specific as to limit the out-of-box ideas and the creative energy that the team will bring to the project work. Targets should consider current state and only include a specific number or a percentage for improvement if there is actual data to verify that number. A measurement system must be in place if the team is supposed to track and make any sort of a percentage or a number improvement. They can only achieve their goal if there's actual data to be able to do that during that check phase of what we call PDCA. However, my recommendation for writing charter documents is, and especially the targets, is usually to remember more the first principle of lean that I shared. Success comes with small changes over time. Small achievable targets, such as, I want the team to create an accurate tracking system. We want to establish a common vocabulary across departments. We want to identify standard handoffs and how they happen, what the expectations are. Those small changes will often achieve better improvement outcomes than challenging the team to hit some kind of high efficiency percentage. At the end of my improvement facilitation, team members most often tell me that these small steps help them build a solid working foundation. And they, from there, can take it to make their improvements if they have that foundation. Establishing these small critical team agreements around tracking, vocabulary, and especially handoffs or touch points, as we call them, it empowers the staff members to do their individual work in the style they prefer doing it, while also creating process predictability, clarity, and efficiency when they need to work together as an entire team. Joanna, I know that was a kind of short section, but I'm going to take another little break and just see if there's any specific questions about charter documents out there.
Yeah, so Deborah, we have a question about, and this speaks to the targets within a charter document, and specifically about metrics. So the question is, can you speak to establishing quality assurance versus quality control metrics in the process and the difference? And then related, what process metrics might provide feedback?
So that is a huge question that we could actually have an entire webinar on.
Yes.
You're getting a lot more into Lean Six Sigma. You're getting a lot more into how control charts are done and measurements, et cetera, are done. So I'm not going to go into the details of that question, but here's how I'm going to answer it. The point that I'm trying to make in this webinar is that when you set the targets, you have to make sure that what you're doing has 2 things included. One is that I actually have current data so that I'm going to be able to compare and do whatever I can do. And it's measurable and it's accurate. It's not a gut feel. It's not, we think we have this. There has to be, and that's why I refer to what you're talking about actually is going to come back to really having some hard measured data. And if you're lucky enough to have that in your permit center, woohoo for you. I will tell you, I don't find it as often as some people may think, but that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm still going to come back and say, when I'm talking about charter documents, we really want to say what is achievable and motivational to the team. So the way that we do, and why I'm so stressing that the team needs to provide input and feedback for the managers, is because a leader or a manager should be thinking into the future and should be thinking stretch goals. But there's times that those stretch goals just seem out of the range for what a team can achieve. And that can really be demotivating for a project, where if the writer of the charter, the leader, the person says, this is my true north, and here's the point. This charter is only about the project that we're going to do now, not my mission statement, not my vision statement. This is about what we're going to do now. Then I want to make some of those targets a whole lot smaller and a whole lot more achievable, because the team will be motivated to get them. And then one more key point, because I don't want to take too long, but one more key point is, a lot of teams I see, if the targets are really achievable and the team feels good about them, they exceed those targets every time. The teams that come in that have these high goals with a lot of numbers or hit this efficiency, it's hard for them to get invested. They get so focused on the numbers that we don't do some of these small changes that I'm talking about.
Okay,
I have to
thanks.
stop there because of time, Joanna, and I hope that we at least address part of the question.
Perfect, thank you. Here is one last question we have time for. Can a charter be revised midstream, or is it set for the duration of the project?
So I actually do get this question, because often people will say, what do you mean final, and when's it final? I will tell you honestly, you will get slightly different opinions from different lean practitioners. I'll explain the way I like to do it. I actually believe that what the team needs is some stability. It's much more reassuring to say, I know what I'm shooting for. Therefore, we're going to make this charter the way I talked. And then when it's final, we're going to start our project. But my boss is not going to start making new targets and give me a moving thing that I can't feel secure that I can achieve. So here's what I like to say. The charter can always change, but that would be a new charter. That would be a revised system. And because I'm talking to a permit group of people, let me put it this way. I hear from permit teams often that one of the decisions you make is, if I get late changes in a, especially I'm thinking bigger projects, if I get a late change, one of the decisions you have to make, is it a small enough change that it still meets the original permit application? Or are we talking about a completely new project? Do we make the applicant go back and possibly submit another application? I would encourage you to think of charter documents that same way. If I'm in a project and I'm making little tweaks, it probably still fits within the original charter. But if people want to revise while they're working on a project, then what we do is we go back and we write another charter document. So I have my beginning point, and now I have the change that I made. Hopefully that was clear, Joanna.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer, and I'm going to turn it back to you to continue.
Perfect. Okay, let's keep going. Our second lean tool is called Gemba, which simply means to go to the source, whether that source is a place, a person, or a document. In lean, we often question hearsay or anecdotal information. This is not to be respectful to the person sharing their knowledge. Rather, it's to eliminate any bias or misunderstanding that could possibly give us wrong information while we're making our improvement decisions. Remember that our third lean principle was to focus on process, not people. And we can do that while still showing respect for people, because in a lean culture, we encourage truth over protecting someone's ego. Lean practitioners want to learn and improve themselves as much as improve the process. We are driven to the truth, and that is what Gemba provides. When we say go to the source, we are in the mindset of learning and understanding what is currently true, not about making any changes at this time. Questions are asked to uncover and clarify the facts. There is no judgment or opinion shared about what we find. When I think specifically about permitting, I like to do 3 types of Gembas. So the first one would be a Gemba walk. What that means is that we go to the process workplace. We look around. We watch work being done. We watch customer flow and the interactions with the staff. We read the posters on the wall, and we read the brochures on the counter. You are taking in information that may be helpful later. One Gemba walk may lead you to other Gemba walk areas as you add to your knowledge of the current state and working environment. Look, watch, and walk. When you're done, just thank people for allowing you to share their world and move on without comment. Which kind of leads into doing Gemba interviews. It's that same purpose, that same mental attitude, but now we're spending time with people, with the workers, asking them to tell and show us what they do. Which application form are you using? Where do you file it when you're done? What's your biggest problem? What works really well? And if you could just change one thing, what would that be? You make no comments or promises back about what you hear and what you learn. And again, thank them for their time, store away the information for future use, and move on. The third one is Gemba, what I like to call resource documentation. While the previous two can really be important at the start of the project you're working on when you're preparing your plan, this one can too. But this third category of Gemba often becomes more important during the improvement work, especially with a team that might get deep into discussion about what their struggles or the problems are that they're having. Often team members will have a differing opinion about what was in the last review document, or you may start picking up a lack of clarity about where to find the application form. Even sometimes the experts who are absolutely sure about what is written in the local code, I will still stop them and ask them, can we pull the code out and read it? It is really helpful to use Gemba and go to that source document and see what is exactly there and what is true. Source information is respected, just like process steps and people are shown respect. This assures that my decisions are going to be made based on fact rather than secondhand opinions or just our human memory. Employing Gemba, I always uncover something that educates me, and surprisingly, often is something that the subject matter expert learns as well. People become experts by doing detailed work daily. You grow your skills and your knowledge, which improves your efficiency, because then those simple, repeatable steps start to become unconscious. They're just done sort of automatically, and you're conserving all your thinking energy for more difficult, kind of the technical tasks. What I like to call mental muscle takes over, and those things are done without even thinking about them. But that same process efficiency can become a weakness when important details get overlooked while we're talking or explaining our work to others. During a Gemba walk or an interview, we slow down to make sure we truly see, hear, and understand all of the actual work steps. We ask respectful questions, and we look at resource documents to uncover missing linkages between action steps that don't make sense. We contain and control our own personal energy, not forming opinions and not telling others what we think about what they're sharing. We are simply curious, asking open-ended questions and pulling their energy and their knowledge toward us. Gemba is a core lean tool because it is so totally about seeing beyond, whether seeing beyond that is beyond my desk or just beyond what we're doing in our department. Seeing can only happen when I'm focused on taking in information rather than forming an opinion about what I want to share out. As a subject matter expert, you might consider doing a Gemba interview with your internal customers and your coworkers just to better understand how your output is used in their work. You can also use Gemba techniques when you want to understand maybe a new strategic initiative or a request from your management team. Because again, Gemba is simply about learning all the facts before you form an opinion or create a judgment or provide any feedback to anyone. Okay, Joanna, another kind of quick section, but let's just checking in to see if there's any questions about the Gemba concept.
Perfect, thank you. One question is this. I really like the idea of doing a Gemba walk, but I'm worried it might create disruption to other customers or applicants if done during work hours. It is not possible to do this after work hours. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, and it almost feels twofold. So let me take the after work hours first. I wouldn't have a problem doing it after work hours if you think you're going to get the same information. So again, maybe your primary goal is to just check in with an internal customer and see what they think. After work hours, probably somewhat of the same thing. If your goal is to actually learn how a front counter interacts with applicants coming in the front door, then after work hours doesn't work as well for me. It's kind of a logic of, again, always checking back with what is your purpose for doing what you're doing. But if I come to the front of it, and actually it's a question I get a lot, and an issue that I have to face often, is people tend to be a little defensive about, you're going to come and watch me, and what are you going to do? Are you hanging over my shoulder? Who are you going to tell after you've watched me? And the only advice I can give you is, I always start with the people that are more open to it. I usually can find somebody that's a little more open to it. And here's the key, because the people that aren't as comfortable with it have to gain the trust that you're not going to violate what they're sharing and doing with you. If you tell them you're only watching for good, and then somehow or another undermine that information that they gave you, you will never gain that trust back again. So what I've learned is, if I can work with the people that actually are kind of open to it. And by the way, I found lots of people like to talk about what they do. I can almost always find someone who's willing to talk about it because it's their work they do. If I can gain the trust there, I can often go other places. And one last thought, even the people that are uncomfortable with it, it's a little bit like having a video camera watch you. People are very aware of me being there in the very beginning. And then pretty soon, not very long, they kind of forget I'm even there. And again, I'm quiet, I'm not saying a lot, I'm being very respectful, and I'm thanking them. So a little bit of the two-part question, hopefully that's added some content, Joanna.
Great, thank you. We have time for one more question. Could a survey be a good option for Gemba for internal and external customers?
So that's a really interesting question that I very honestly have. Here's the difference for me. It depends. You're going to hear me, you'll get tired of hearing me say it depends. I would love the idea if you're using it in combination kind of with the Gemba, and maybe because maybe it would open that door for you. It would open the door for people to know why you're there, what you're doing, and give them some feedback. If you're doing it as a straight survey, then that's two different tools, because Gemba is very much about going to the source and seeing it, hearing it, where for me, a survey is still something somebody makes an assessment on their own and tells you. But if you're using a survey in a combination with the Gemba, anything that sort of gets you in to get things started. I think where I'll add one more thought, Joanna, if you would be doing that, again, I'm going to say the survey is not a standalone. Even if I would do a Gemba and use some kind of a survey tool with those people, like maybe an interview, that wouldn't be where I would end. I would use it as a catalyst or a door opener or something to help me get started, but I would still remember the foundational reason and idea around a Gemba, and I would probably go a little further than just the straight survey. Good question.
All right, thank you. I will turn it back to you.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the third and the final lean tool that I'll cover today. Remember that a tool is a device that requires some skill to use it properly. For this tool, I want you to focus on lean principle number 3. We focus on process, not people. That should be your mental guide while you're building the map. But let's take a step back and start from the beginning of process mapping. The purpose for making a process map is to create a visual representation of the work being done, what tasks are being performed, in what order, and by whom. This may sound like a standard flow chart, but it is so much more. The critical difference is how we create the map versus how you would create a flow chart, which, by the way, your visual process map can be documented later into flowchart form if that's what you're looking for. There's 3 critical rules that I like to follow when creating my process map. The first, the person who is explaining the steps to be placed on the map is the subject matter expert, the person performing the work on a regular basis. The map is not what other people believe or see is happening or being done. The work steps are only placed on that map by the person who is currently doing that step, whether they be the engineer, the department director, a permit tech, no matter who they are, it is the person that is doing the work. I can't stress this point strong enough that it's the only person who can accurately describe what they do. This is where other team members need to be present, not checked out, but present and listening to what is being described without injecting any judgment or bias of their personal opinion or their perspective. The second rule is to capture the current state process steps, exactly how they're being done. Seeing the real world is the goal, not what's described in policy documents, not what someone captured in a meeting notes. We need to withhold all of our judgment or any shame about how the work may be performed to be able to really uncover the root cause of issues that are going to be needed to be addressed if we want to make improvements. If we spend time complaining about work frustrations, they're usually symptoms of the underlying problem. So while we're listening, team members should be asking clarifying questions and honestly making some supportive comments to the person who is sharing their work, because they're probably feeling a little insecure if they're exposing things that is what they consider not quite as up to snuff as possible. This is the critical point of building a process map and the first step to identifying an improvement area. When team members can rally around and support the sharing by a fellow subject matter expert, those uncomfortable facts will surface and progress can be made. Eventually, all members of the team are going to do the same. We're all striving to be open and name their part of the process, and likely everyone has some issues to expose as well. The third rule helps determine where on the process map to dig a little deeper into the details, as opposed to where a short summary might suffice. I like to say that not every step is of equal value. We say that Lean has respect for people as subject matter experts, and that means that we trust their individual work that is being done accurately in their own style at their own desk. So we only capture a summary of those actions that they tend to do alone. More important are what we call the touch points, those that happen when work is moving from one action step to another or one person to another, but specifically when one output becomes another input. Those parts of the map of the process workflow must be clearly and accurately defined with a deeper understanding of the details. We focus on individual process steps, making sure that we capture what is a standard versus what is variable. For example, if we have a step of receiving an application, it's important to also ask how. How does it need to be submitted? Completely online, or can I hand a paper copy to the tech at the counter? My flow is going to be different depending on what those variables are with that associated step. Sometimes the challenge is to know how detailed to go in making that map. How much time do we spend on each specific area of work? Here's a good rule of thumb that I like to do is focus on most of the steps or the elements that impact more than one action or more than one person. For example, as we say, we're much more interested in those touch points than the individual work. So as a map facilitator, I am much more interested on how a building official may contribute their comments into that customer review letter. Much more interested in that how than I am about how the building official created the review comments in the first place. That's their area of expertise, and I trust they did a good job. But it's how do their comments compile in with everyone else's that eventually gets to the customer. Those are the touch points for me. Once the team completes the map, now they can begin to discuss where improvement is needed and what changes that they want to make. The future value of that map will be then to take their proposed changes to the sponsor or the management team, because they're going to need to ask for approval to make the changes that they've defined. Just like saying a picture is worth 1,000 words, it continues to be surprising how quickly A change proposal can be explained and approved by a sponsor when there's a visual map where they can see the value of what's been done and that the team has done their due diligence to create the proposal that they're showing. In my facilitation work, I tend to see three typical scenarios for people when they build a current state process map. It's just kind of categories to be able to talk about it more easily. So if there's a good standard current state already existing, creation tends to go pretty smoothly. I would actually say quickly. The value gained from still building this map comes from the team members gaining clarity on what challenges and frustrations their other teammates may face in different parts of the workflow. And a completed map still provides that visual representation for management, which often grows their confidence in the team's ability to work independently, have higher productivity and higher performance. The second, which is the most often demonstration or map that I stumble across, and that is that there's really good workflow areas, and that part of the map is built quickly. And then there's other areas where the team really struggles to explain something that's inconsistent or something troublesome in the work steps. We dig into those areas because those are the ones that have a need for improvement. We need to make them clearer, as I said, as we dig a little bit more deeply into the details, and we try to get to that root cause of what was causing the confusion. Then my third option is occasionally there is the team who simply cannot build a process map. And most often this is because they have no standard in their current state. Don't get me wrong, these folks are still getting work done, but most oftenly what I like to call a process du jour. They're making daily changes, daily adjustments. They're trying to work hard as a team to push through their work without a lot of predictability or clear expectations among the team members as to what's coming their way. These folks tend to talk about a lot of surprises. Given these three types of mapping exercises, I still have found that all of them have value to build, especially when you're identifying the next step in your improvement project and how you're going to approach it. You need to know where you are starting from to create a good plan that's going to achieve your goals. So depending what you found building the process map, here are some suggestions for your next steps. So let's say you were one of those, you built a map pretty quickly, it looks pretty obvious, you have a pretty good current state. Your first option is let's just celebrate your achievement and make no changes. A reason I love lean is based on change to make improvements on identified weaknesses. We never change just for the sake of change or just because we want to try something new. That would be a test on the side. We make improvements by really making sure that there's something that is very structurally and based on facts that we do. This team might also get really inspired by the work that they're doing and strive to do a little better. Are there some more steps we can standardize? Can we tweak a little bit more efficiency out of the really good process we already have? The point is, I've seen teams just have a lot of fun while they're celebrating those little victories, and they keep working and keep increasing job satisfaction. And it's really why so many people will term lean as a journey and not an end state. Or you might be building the map and discovering that much of the process is done well, but there are a few key areas for improvement. As I say, this is the most frequent outcome I see. The value of this map confirms there's a problem, but the improvement opportunities and the next step of actions become much clearer because now I know where I need to really focus, and hopefully I have uncovered the root cause, not just describing frustrations or symptoms of that root cause. Most often, believe it or not, the problem is found that there was an old form that we never updated when a new process came into effect or a new computer system came into effect. Or there was an experienced staff member that left and a key step was dropped or done differently because the person replacing them wasn't told or didn't know what to do. The point is that visualizing the current state helps the team define where the issues lie and opens the door for system-based improvements, not just moving work from one location to another. Sometimes the process map identifies several areas for improvement, and now the team needs to decide how those areas might be related for one improvement or one area of change, or if they're not related, now I have to start prioritizing. Where do I place my attention? And that is where we think of the lean principle of taking small steps over time and on heading to true north, but knowing that it's going to take some time. However, there are those times when a team cannot build a current state map because their process steps just change too often and there's no way to capture a standard flow. I see the hands go up in the air and a lot of frustration, but honestly, all is not lost. Remember that identifying the problem is your first big step toward finding a solution. Lean-based process mapping, the tool I'm talking about, can now shift from a focus on current state to what that team might want as a future standard process. They don't get bogged down making the map perfect, but rather let's take everything we know about what we currently do and pick the best of those changes and really create one process that we can move toward. We make agreements across the value stream. We focus on those critical handoffs or touch points and be very clear about the expectations. And as we described earlier, if I can start thinking about what my internal customers really define as quality, I can now think of input and output. And before you know it, I have a roadmap for how to take me from where I am today to where I can actually get to a pretty good standard state. Okay, Joanna, we are getting good at this. One more time, what about process mapping?
Fantastic. Here's your first question. Would you recommend that each subject matter expert, meaning people who perform the same tasks, meet at the same time to explain their individual process and draw one process map? Or should we meet with them individually?
Love the question. And you're going to love my answer. Yes. Let me explain. I have done both, and both can work really, really well. And again, what I'm going to come back to is there's the process, which we're always focused on first. The piece I haven't gone into as much today is other lean principles that will say, as much as we focus on process, we never forget that people are it's the people that are doing those process steps. So here's the answer to the question. The reason I say yes, I have done both. I've done them both successfully. It depends on the team. And I'll give you the difference for me and how I make the determination. The ones where I've had the entire team, I've done these where we actually get somebody to cover the front desk and all the permit techs are together. Maybe there's 3 in the city and they're all in together. It can make a really, really strong map because I'm going to have them all hearing what's going on all together. But here's my key. I'm going to still be asking them individually, do you do it that way? Do you do it that way? Most often, even if the whole team is together, I will find small differences. If it's important, I might capture those differences on my process map, but it's more if they're doing differences where those touch points are. So if they're using different forms, if they're filing it in a different location, my point is, I don't care as much if Sally does A and then B, and John does B and then A, as long as it doesn't disrupt my process. So not to go too deep on time, but I love to have a whole group together because and here's the reason for that. When we're done, they not only created the map together, they have bonded kind of together as a team. They know each other a lot better, and they come out being much more supportive of the change that we defined. But I'm going to flip to the other side. There's been just as many times that I do not have them all there. And what we ask for is a representative, one of the representatives of the subject matter experts in the room. There's 2 reasons I might do this, and I'm going to give you both of them because it's important. Here's the first one. We just simply don't have coverage. We are too busy. I cannot afford to have all 3 of my people away. I'm going to pick one. That's the only reason. They get along well as a team. They would love to be together in the room. Everything is great. If that's true, then I always make time throughout my mapping process to bring the other two in after the first person has made their map. I then shift out or I'll invite them in for just a short time because I want to confirm what we've put on the map and make sure that the other subject matter experts are agreeing with that. My other scenario, however, does happen occasionally, and that is when I will find out that it's not a very well functioning team. And I won't go into it too deeply, but I will uncover some completely separate beliefs. Maybe they do things completely separately. What I like to do is I often do Gemba interviews then before we start onto the project. And then it just kind of follows a trail of knowledge that we gain, whether we want to bring them in individually. Sometimes I still want to bring them in together, but I need that upfront information so that we can make a better choice of who's in the room. And let me end with this, Joanna. It is perfectly appropriate to have 3 subject matter experts doing the same thing, but have just one in the room that's building the map, with the understanding that when we're done, we're going to include the others so that we do sort of a level of involvement, you have a voice, and we're confirming what we have on our map.
Okay, thanks, Deborah. Here we have time for one more question. How much time should we allow to make a process map?
Here we do it, and honestly, and I'm only smiling because it is so true, and I would be asking the same question. How do I figure this all out? Time is the most important thing that we have today. It's just everybody is crunched, everybody's doing a ton of work. So time is always the most important. So I'm gonna violate one of my little rules. I'm gonna start off by saying it depends, just like I gave you before on PDCA. It really depends. It depends how big of a process you're working with, how many people you're doing, how deep into it you want to go. Here's what I'm going to violate. I'm going to give you a number. Are you ready, Joanna? I'm going to give you a number just because I think people need to hear it. So again, I've been working with permit teams over the past 10 years, mostly looking at what I would call pretty robust processes. They're not all the same, but we often look from application is submitted at the front counter or online, and we go to a building permit approval. If that's kind of the scope of what we have, if I have a team that is open-minded, working well together, really wanting to get to the goal of where they want to achieve, that we're all in the same place, we have a good charter document, we can build a current state map usually in 1 day. I usually count in the facilitation work I do, I usually count 1 to 1.5 days to build that map. I have built high-level maps in a short time during a training session where maybe it takes us an hour and we can build a really high-level, more of a flow chart than a process map. But process maps can be built about that quickly unless I have a lot of different dynamics to deal with. If there's a lot of disagreement in the teams or other things that will bog us down, because maybe the more problems we have, the longer it's going to take. I guess that's the best way to answer it.
Okay, thank you for that, Deborah. I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, well, we're getting ready to wrap up here. Look at this. We are at recap. So I'm going to do a little bit of recap. We'll do some closing, and then we'll have time for some more questions as well. So let's just do a short review of what we've covered today and think about how you might start applying these principles and tools in your organization. Remember that lean is scalable, so you might decide to start small and think about applying lean methodology to just your portion of the workflow, or you might be ready to jump in and ask some of your team members if they'd like to do a small project. No matter the size, hopefully today's webinar has proved that clearly understanding your current state is the main key to making improvements that are sustainable and successful in the future. And just like this little guy in the picture, I guess I'm trying to convince you that if you want to find the cheese, you may need to have a new perspective. It's less about defending the work done on your desk and more about seeing beyond your desk. Customer satisfaction is not only about efficiency in your area of expertise, but found in the organization that works together effectively across the entire value stream. The foundation for workflow efficiency is predictability. If everyone on the team is more efficient when each individual can predict and know what is coming their way as input, if the person delivering their output has clear expectations about timeline, format, and content, then we know that we will make a more efficient and effective connection at those touch points, which is our main number one key. We covered 4 lean principles today: small changes over time to achieve a true north, following a plan, do, check, act structure to make process improvements. We focus on process, not people. And the customer who is downstream from my work defines quality. There are many, many more lean principles that can create the concept of lean thinking and really help you build a strong lean culture. But these 4 foundational ones will serve you well, way beyond just one improvement project. Then we learned about lean tools. They're all focused on the start of process improvement, and they all focus on understanding the current state. Charter documents align the team by assuring that there is clarity of purpose, clarity of scope, clarity of targets. What are we trying to achieve before we even start working on it together? Gemba mindset and information collection converts all those personal assumptions into proven fact, which is critical for any sustainable improvement process that I'm doing. And process mapping creates a visual picture of the critical to be protected steps of the workflow while helping everyone on the team see beyond their own desk and identify those areas for improvement. So I think in closing, I'll just make the comment that this webinar started off by explaining that we prefer lean methodology because it is adaptable to any process and it's scalable to any scope. Lean is also the method of choice because it has simple concepts based on common sense ideas and actionable steps. The difficult part of lean is the discipline to follow the methodology, which requires more planning up front and time to do the planning to achieve better outcomes and that sustainable change that we're looking for. And finally, lean practitioners have the patience to implement small changes over time, and they have the persistence to work through the setbacks because they're going to happen, because we know that the payoff at the end of the work will make all of this worthwhile if we just keep going. So that is the end of our webinar. We have time for a few more questions that we'll do here just in a minute. But first, let's just consider what you can do, what actions you can take away from here starting today. As I said before, all the attendees are going to receive an email with direct links to our charter document template and the training that goes along with it. We'll be sending out some additional emails in the future and providing more information about things like Gemba and process mapping and other lean resources that you might find helpful. By viewing this webinar, you should be ready to take some small steps alone or with other members of your team. And you may want to try that. You may want to really remember that continuous improvement is always at the start by understanding current state. Doing that one little thing can make a big difference for you. Try the 3 tools that we covered today and see how they can help you. You may have a favorite. You may find they all work. You may find that one works better for you. Pick a small improvement project. Try PDCA. Be aware of the purpose. Be really clear about which step you are in, and then practice, practice, practice. It gets easier as you go. I would also encourage you to review the lean principles and consider if there's other areas of your daily work where you can apply them. Because again, a lot of lean and the success about lean is the culture that you're building within your organization. Lean is understanding the known and then learning something new that maybe you didn't know. It's a continuous improvement cycle of understand, learn more, make an improvement. Understand, learn more, make an improvement. And with that, I am going to put up our contact information here. I will come back to this in a minute, but just in case people are on a timeline and need to go, this will be the end. We're going to open it up here for some more questions and just say thank you for attending the webinar. So with that, Joanna, I am going to go to questions, and then I'm going to put our contact information back up on the screen.
Okay, so we've received a couple of questions about Gemba and process mapping. And so I'm going to start with the first one. This is almost a sequential, a question about sequence. Would you recommend starting with Gemba and then mapping the process?
So most often that is what I do. So the quick and easy answer to that is yes. That is what I do most often. If there's only been a few times I've done it in a different way, and that's because I've started process mapping and we've really struggled. I'll give you one specific example. I was with a team that could not build a map. They were in my third category, and I just assumed they didn't have a standard process. So we backed up a little bit. I did some Gembas before we got together again. And when I was talking to them alone, I started figuring out they have more of a standard than they thought they did. It just happened to be a fairly small team that could not, vocabulary wise, connect up and explain a map to me. But the easy answer to the question, Joanna, is yes. I love to do Gembas before I start process mapping.
Okay. So the next question is about both the nexus between Gemba and process mapping and how you might take information you learn from Gemba and reflect it on the process map. So the specific questions are, would process mapping also include our observation during Gemba? For example, the shadowing of internal and external customers, or when we interview them?
Yes, great insight. Whoever is asking these questions, great insight. You're making me, you're really kind of touching my heart, because this is where my passion for this work comes out. So I'm going to step through one scenario, but I'm going to tell you there could be lots and lots of others. So as I'm listening to the question, if I'm understanding it, here's what will happen. Let's say I do a Gemba and I collect a lot of information, and now I'm going to build a process map. And here's what will happen. As I start building the process map, I'm hearing different things than I saw in the Gemba. So remember what Gemba was. I'm going to take it in. I'm not going to make a judgment. I'm not going to tell them at the time. And here's my point. Also not going to stand in the process map and say, well, you didn't show me that when I was doing my Gemba with you, right? This is not about outing. I don't want to lose the trust of what I promised these people to do. So here's the point is, as I'm building the process map, I'm going to build it just like they tell me in that room. And I'm going to keep my Gemba information in the back of my head. When we either get the map built or even a high level built, and we're ready to start sort of digging into it, or if the team can't build it, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use probing questions. And yes, now I'm going to say yes. Yes, I can bring Gemba back into the process map, but I'm going to do it in a form of questions and not telling, because that's what Gemba is about. Gosh, I think, you're struggling a little bit with this. I think there was something you showed me at the front where you had a drawer on the left-hand side where you pulled something out of. Could you think about that? I'm going to do it in a way of still considering myself a facilitator or a mentor or a curious person. I'm never going to tell them, this is what I heard you say, and this is how the map is going to be built. I got into this, Joanna. Did I miss a part of that question? I'm trying to remember exactly if there was more of a content in the question.
You did not miss any part in that
Okay.
question. The other question, similar question we received was just, it's that nexus between taking what you learned from Gemba, documenting that and reflecting that onto the process map.
Got it. And even only because you say the word documenting, I will say when I'm doing Gembas, I'm taking lots of notes. There's times I'm taking lots of notes. I didn't say that in the presentation because I'm talking about looking, listening. I want to be in the moment. However, I always walk away with kind of key notes. So I do a certain amount of documentation. But again, what I want to really caution you on is to make sure that you're separating the clarity on Gemba is about taking it in. Process mapping is about respecting the subject matter experts. And here's maybe the point that I'll make. There's times where you think people have changed what they're telling you, and in their mind, they really didn't. It's just that they thought about something a little more clearly, or they were thinking about one individual exception where now they're on a process map and they're telling you something that's a little more standard. There's definitely a nexus between them, but you also have to remember that they're two different tools.
Great, thank you. The next question is, do you recommend that Lean be conducted with a consultant, or is it feasible for a team to do this on their own?
So the whole purpose of this webinar is we love when you do things on your own. There are a few things, and it's a great question because there's just a few things to remember. Is you don't need somebody official from the outside. You can absolutely do it on your own. You just have to think about who is doing the facilitation. So I have a couple rules of thumb, and they are just my rules of thumb because of what I've learned over my much more than 10 years of doing this. So first of all, the person who is leading or helping doing the map or building all of these things cannot be your sponsor or your manager. You cannot ignore, even I have people all the time tell me we get along great. We have no problem between us and our manager. It does not matter. There's still a hierarchical difference. It cannot be the director of the department or the supervisor when they have people in their room. Second of all, it can actually be somebody else from the team if they're seen as somebody that can be really non-biased. But often what I like to recommend is if you're doing it in your team, ask somebody from another team to help you. It's still internal to your group, but it's somebody from the outside. The key for this, to try to answer the question a little more quickly, the key for this is whoever is helping you do it. So I do believe you need somebody who is designated to be your lead, whether that's on your team or somebody else. Somebody needs to make sure that they're checking in. Is the charter document being followed? How are we doing on timing? Are we staying focused? Are we having scope creep? Somebody has to own that. The idea of having somebody from the outside of your team come in is the fact that they don't have as much information as you do. The flaw in doing the work yourself is that you think you will be unbiased. You think that you won't add sort of your opinion to certain things, but it's just not feasible for us as humans to do that. The value of Lean is to really ask those questions, dig a little deeper, and try to get to root cause of things. And often you can't do it yourself. But I'm going to end by saying, if you think you have a good team that is open to that, assign somebody in a leadership role and go for it. Give it a try, see how it works.
We have time for one more question with a brief response. There are so many places we could look at to start making improvements. How do I know where the best place is to start? Everything seems connected, but I can't see a clear place to begin.
Yep. So the word that I like the most in that question is, where's the best? We kind of get bogged down in this sometimes, and this is where I talk a little bit about whether you like to term it analysis paralysis or we're having a hard time making a decision. I understand the word best, and I live in that myself. However, times you just need to make a decision and move. It's more important to make a decision and move. However, I will give you a couple just guidelines again that I use. Sometimes you don't want to pick something so small that if you make the improvement, you almost feel like you're kind of overkilling it with the tool that you're going to use. So there's times people have asked me to come in and do a Lean project, and I'm like, that's almost a little too small of a scope. I would really like to have a little more of an impact than that. In the same breath, don't pick your biggest, snarliest, nastiest problem that you have, because that's not where you want to start. You want to start small and move your way up. So I really like starting either in the middle or a little bit below that. And honestly, the next thing I'll say is I've had this exact example or scenario. We look over, I've had a team tell me there's 6 different places they really want to focus on. What I'm listening for is which one has the person in the room that I really believe is going to have the energy and the focus and the persistence to drive through and do the structured change. I don't like to see people select I've seen a manager select the place and it happens to be the person that really doesn't want to make the improvement. And that's like pushing a rock uphill. So look for the place where it may not be the easiest, but it's certainly not the hardest. And you have motivation to make the change, and just pick it and make the change there and go for it.
Okay, perfect. And with that, we are out of time for the question portion. So Deborah, do you have any final closing comments before I wrap up?
I think the only thing I'm going to say, which is going to sound really, really redundant, is the biggest thing I can tell you from all the experience I've had. The best thing you can do, which is super hard to do, especially today in our world, and that is to slow down. Slow down. Think about taking more in the beginning. This whole idea of going slow to go fast. I get so many people that get nervous when we're going slow, but I just cannot stress it enough. If you go slow to get everything you need in the beginning, it is just amazing how fast the improvement goes, and it's sustainable and gets you where you want to go because you did your work up front. That's the biggest thing I can stress by everything we talked about today.
All right. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, everybody who joined us today. This concludes our presentation about building better permitting processes using lean tools. Have a great day.
Bye.